Good morning. My name is Lynn Edmonds, and my husband, Bill Edmonds, was a longtime Winkie and member of IWOC. Bill's interest began in 1940 when he was born, and his parents gave him at his birth Christmas the first copy of Wizard of Oz. He continued to get one every year through school, and it built his love of Oz forever until he died in 2019. Bill attended most of the Winkie conventions in Asilomar, San Diego, and Portland, in addition to the conventions hosted by OzCon International in 2018 and 2019. This story I'm reading is in memory of my husband, and it appeared in the 2008 issue of Oziana and was written by Jeffrey Rester. The title is A Fearful Symmetry and is about how the hungry tiger became so hungry. The story is illustrated by Dennis Anfuso, a longtime member of IWOC and contributor to Oziana for many years. Jeffrey Rester has contributed to Oziana since 2007 and was introduced to the publication by the multi-talented author and illustrator Marcus Mevis, who has been involved with Oziana for the last 15 years or more and has been in the editor since 2013. Thank you for helping us celebrate 50 years of Oziana, the publication of original art, poetry, and stories by members of the Oz Club, which was started in 1971. And now I will read you the story of Thy Fearful Symmetry. The great cat paced back and forth, sniffing at the air furiously. What was that scent, faint as a baby's breath, which hung in the air like the rot of a gangrenous wound? The hungry tiger knew that I could smell, but from where? Why? What was it about the foul odor that tugged his memory, making his hackles crawl with revulsion and stoking his considerable ire? With a twitch of his tremendous limbs, the feline leapt over the sprawling castle wall and out into the center of the fabled Emerald City. The pungency had been lingering at the heart of the royal palace, and now was headed away towards the north. The tiger knew this instinctively, his nostrils flaring with every intake of faint tainted breath. The giant cat bounded over roof and wall, brick and mortar, closing in tightly on his elusive prey with the finality of a hangman's noose. The tiger hurled his massive frame effortlessly through the air, leaving the emerald-encrusted street beneath him and landing silently on an adjacent balcony of marble. There he waited, remote, indignant, his fearful carnivorous teeth bared in silent fury. A slight intake of breath from the adjoining room behind him snatched the looming beast from his dark intent. The fragrance of sweetness, clean and powder fresh, pulled at the hungry tiger hypnotically, causing his mouth to salivate, his tongue to unfurl with drool. There in its bassinet, ensconced in verdant silk and embroidered lace pillows, lay a helpless babe, sighing as it dreamed away innocently. The ever-hungering tiger crept soundlessly into the nursery, the scent of the infant overwhelming, the pangs of voracious craving clawing at the beast's inside, gnawing and burrowing like a thing alive. Oh, how wonderful you must taste, thought the tiger. Oh, how magnificent the saltiness of your cherubic flesh, the gush of your warm. The hungry tiger shook his savage head, trying his utmost to drive away the incessant longing to engorge himself on the fat of innocence. Here again was that perpetual appetite that lingered and sunk into his very soul with hellish tenterhooks, never letting go, never easing for one merciful moment. The gentle tiger looked at the baby and felt that all too familiar stab of conscience, adulterated with callous, insatiable famine. Was there ever a second, one small trice in all his long life where he had never felt this ever-present emptiness lurking within him? It seemed to the deadly cat as if it had always been thus, that he had hungered from the very day he was born, never to be satiated. The sound of hobbled footsteps from the street below pricked at the tiger's keen ears, his nostrils widening in disgust, as once more he was overwhelmed by the melodious scent. The cat turned to the balcony, heaving his leonine mass upon the marble balustrade that separated him from the thing he so proficiently hunted. And there, like a poised figure of graceful death, the tiger looked down on the thing that made the bile rise in his throat, the cause of the stench that turned his stomach and taunted his memory. Her scent was all too familiar, this slumped old woman with her wrinkled skin and sunken jowls. The tiger smelled the dampness on her fresh water mixed with her own fetid perspiration. The cat felt his throat rumble with a guttural growl, his saber-like claws piercing the stone beneath him, his very fur standing on end as the wizened crone looked up. Mute fear contorted her face, making her even more hideous than before. The tiger stared at the twisted thing, his teeth bared menacingly, his round eyes bulged, the windows of his animal soul dilating, the mouth of his feline heart opening wide, swallowing whole the recognition of the egg, and with its ingestion came recognition. Recognition, the glossy sheen the heart can chew on, and that which the soul can know, for most secret of all is that which has been forgotten. The gates of memory flung open wide, pushing the decades back in an instant, blurring the familiar jade tinges of the city of emerald with purpurесcent softness. In the heart of that deep violet forest, the very locale of his mortality, Tiger had hunted with uncanny stealth, his purple stripes blending with the lavender foliage. The lingering scent had returned noxious and vile, but with it a mix of sweet freshness, something young, not indigenous to the tiger's domain. Was it male or female? The pleasant aroma seemed to be a blend of both, but it was hard to separate the smell from the repulsiveness of the stronger odor. The eyes of the tiger burned bright from the depths of his purple undergrowth as he peered intently at his prey. The wretched hag, the self-proclaimed wicked witch of the north, stood in the warmth of the sun and open air, a bundle of white clutched to her husk of a bosom. "Oh," she cooed through her misshapen teeth, "that's a sweet little baby. We don't want to make old Mombi mangry now, do we?" She stuck her bony finger into the wrapped burden she carried, trying to console her charge with the finesse of a scorpion. "My own little Ozma Infanta," Mombi said through her sneer of a smile. "My own hidden key to the kingdom entire. But that name really doesn't suit you anymore, does it, Papa? Seeing as you've been through a little change as of late. Now let me see. I would think," here the crone paused, "you are now more of an Ozma's Infante, eh?" Mombi stood stock still, frozen in place. An unsettling feeling crept over her as though someone was stepping over her grave, and against her own volition began to utter and swoon in the quavering voice of an unwitting pythoness. "Art thou a separated twin? Then find the other half within. But in its dreams do not thyself encumber, nor rouse it from its fearful slumber." The witch clutched at the wattle of her neck, trying in vain to stop the words that issued without consent from her throat. With a subtle vibration, her vocal cords relaxed, and she found her tongue once more her own. But she was too bewildered to speak. Mombi, for all her arcane knowledge, was at a loss to identify the strange force that had passed over her. She looked at the little baby in her folded arm and doubted for a moment the wisdom of her evil scheme. The witch brushed away any hesitation or fear. She had come too far now to turn back. Had she not contemplated regicide? Had she not dirtied her hands with far worse crimes? The die was cast just as surely as were her black spells. She looked once more on the child and steeled her resolution with yet another lie. "No more royalty for you, dear Ozma. That name in any variation is far too obvious and not proper for the gammon you now are. No, you will be my Tipperarius, a mere servant to no lady of the forest, and so shall you be at Mombi's beck and call for all your miserable days." The leering hag poked the baby with her gnarled digits, startling the child from its slumber, and the forest echoed with the infant's terrified cry. Mombi raised the baby in a fit of anger as to shake it. The sound of a snarling growl came suddenly from behind her, stopping her dead as she felt her skin prickle with fear. The witch slowly turned around, wailing infant in hand, and looked upon the sureness of her own demise. There before her stood a great tiger with black-purple stripes around his lithe body, powerful limbs, and eyes that showed through the half-closed lids like coals of fire. Its teeth, predacious and lethal, framed the gaping maw that promised to swallow the infernal hag, whole and complete. "Unhand the child," roared the monarch of the jungle, "or I will rip your paltry flesh from your dried old bones." Mombi quaked with fear as the vehement beast closed in on her. She clutched her ill-gotten charge tightly to her carcass of body and slowly stepped back and away from it. From the ever-widening jaws of the tiger, "What is it to you, this child, myself? The babe would hardly make a snack for one such as you, and I'm hardly a bone to pick your teeth with." "I would not sully my stomach with the likes of you, witch." The tiger's eyes burned brighter with fury. "The child is not yours. This I can smell and taste. You mean it harm. I will not allow this here in my domain. Give the infant to me now." Mombi found her spine once more and cackled like a wild hyena. Something strange passed over her, something unknown and foreboding, emboldening the witch as never before. Was it the same magic that had taken hold of her only moments before, making her prophesy against her will? Or did it have to do with her recent intimate dealings with Nocturne Nicodic? She did not know why or how, but Mombi knew that she knew, and with this knowledge came a dreadful power. Now, not needing her usual potions, talismans, or any of her other sorcerous implements, Mombi reached deep within the dark cockles of her wicked heart and called forth arcane power. "Vincolo serpents," she whispered, and the tiger stood transfixed before her. The dark stripes of his fur became animate, coiling tightly around the cat like a nest of snakes, squeezing him so hard that his mouth opened hideously wide and his great eyes turned liquid. "So you think you can beat old Mombi, eh? Here in her domain? Oh, you foolish tabby cat, your life is about to change forever." The witch silently called upon the north, her region of power in which she now stood, and upon the north's element, cold, dry earth, feeling its bottomless pits opening beneath her feet, tunneling ever outward and up. Mombi's consciousness crawled through the subterranean darkness she opened up with the ease of a gnome and broke through its surface into the burning sands of the possible desert, the deadly waste that clutched at the northern tip of off, destroying any living thing foolish enough to touch it. And though the moist elements of air and water were now anathema to her, the witch still could call on the element of fire, hot and dry, and this she did. In the vacuum of cinder and sparks, the sands of the toxic doom seeped into the crust of the earth like the grains in an hourglass, bearing its exit as it went. The ground at Mombi's poorly shod feet cracked open where she stood and spewed forth the acidic dirt in a horrific sandspout. Chaotically, it danced and swirled like a swarm of bees, lashing around Mombi and snatching greedily at the baby she held in her knotty arm. The wicked witch of the north held up the gnarled forefinger of her free hand, and instantly the pulsating sand stopped midair, humming with energy. Then Mombi, with furrowed brow and mouth askew, closed her eyes and plumbed her twisted mind for an image, something that she could use as an emblem to sear upon the soul of the tiger and to seal the curse. In her mind's eye, a revolting image began to form, a winged creature grotesque and contorted, no friend to man or beast. The floating desert sand, like a potter's clay, began to solidify, taking on the image that grew clearer still in Mombi's psyche. And there it stood, Athen famous, with its pallid skin and sunken eyes staring hungrily. Its emaciated frame was ravaged with starvation, its entrails visible through its shriveled flesh. And where its stomach should have been was nothing but a void, held up by jagged hip bones bulging out beneath hollow loin. With this awful being vivid in her head, Mombi smiled like a gorgon and began to forge the unbreakable bonds of her spell, the tiger standing weak and helpless before her. Mombi looked down at the wailing baby locked in the prison of her bony arm and touched her gnarled index finger to the corner of the cat's eye. The fragile teardrop-like icicle to the old hag burned deep into the flesh of her fingertip. The smell of the wound caused the witch to retch and cough as she groaned from the self-inflicted torture. Mombi sneered despite the agonizing pain and mercilessly thrust her dissolving fingertip deep into the mouth of the tiger. Tiger, I curse thee with hunger's keenest smart, to tear at your vitals and corrode your heart. Oh, famine with your sharpest pangs, sheath yourself into his feline veins, voracious appetite with the tainting blast, infuse his blood with an endless fast. Ever so slowly, Mombi withdrew her bony finger from the mouth of the whimpering cat, sneering down at him with sadistic delight. She then took her misshapen hand and held it out toward the image and pressed upon the sand. The enchanted dust sagged, collapsing in upon itself, and fell into Mombi's outstretched palm. She brought the handful of dirt to the tiger's forced open mouth, inhaled, and blew the foulness straight down his throat. The tiger writhed, tearing furiously at his bonds, howling in fear and sheer madness. My pain is now your pain. The taste of the infant is on your tongue, on your soul. The appetites for its flesh branded upon your heart with blood and fire. You will crave ceaselessly for the fat of helpless babes. Your noble conscience too clean to ever allow you to do so. Be forever hungry, tiger. Be forever cursed. Existo formiculas tigris habito in aeternum. And with those hurtful words, the spell was cast, and the hungry tiger came to be. Mombi, finished with her malediction, released the tiger from his bonds. With a savage roar that shook the very forest with its ferocity, the hungry tiger bounded into the surrounding foliage, screaming out in blinding pain. Run, scaredy cat, run! Mombi shouted in the beast's wake, cackling madly. And run the great cat did, with his gnawing belly of fire, guided only by some strange instinct toward the south, tears stinging his eyes as he fled to the source of his pain. The tormenting veil closed on the awful tableau, as the tiger's awareness returned to the bitter presence, the source of his perpetual agony standing right before him. You, roared the hungry tiger, you witch are the cause of all this. His claws, fueled by his hot anger, crumbled the marble railing as he pounced to the ground before the helpless old woman. The tiger bared his teeth, gleaming wet with homicide. Mombi, trying to fall back away, fell to the ground with a sickening crack of her old bone. Mercy, cat, mercy! I'm a helpless old woman. I do not intend you any harm. Please, I do not know you. What have I ever done to you? Please. Mombi closed her eyes as her scream echoed all around. Tiger, no, came a gentle voice from just behind the feline. The hungry tiger snapped his head around, saliva spewing from his wide open mouth. There, facing the tiger, stood the other victim of the old witch who had been present the day that fateful curse was cast. Though she wasn't a helpless child any longer, the tiger was beyond his senses, his fury having pushed him into a feral state. He opened his raging mouth wider, ever wider, and roared with all his might at his sovereign. Tiger, withdraw your fangs. Sheathe your claws. I will not allow this in my kingdom. The tiger snapped his great mouth shut, his large eyes burning with rage, his throat rumbling with rancor. Ozma placed her hand upon the troubled brow of the beast, soothing him with her calming touch. Tiger, you must let this go. You have striven far too long and come too far to give in to this evil now. But your majesty, bellowed the tiger angry, this is Mombi, the hateful thing that stole your childhood, that turned me into this thing you see before you. My guts are on fire, Ozma. It's eating me alive. I can end this. Let me. He turned his eyes back on the shivering bundle on the ground. Suffer not a witch to live, he purred in a fierce, loud whisper, fangs bared once more at the old head. Tiger, I know you are tormented. I've seen you struggle with this for years, and to your immense credit, you have always bested this awful thing. I know the others do not really understand just how powerful your urges are. You laugh it off, playing it down for the benefit of your friends. Your endless desire for a fat baby to feast upon is nothing but a silly, endearing quality to all who love you. But the truth is often said in jest, and they have no idea how awful the truth really is. But you must let it go. You must let Mombi go. The tiger looked at Ozma with doleful eyes. But how can you forgive her after the inhumane things she did to you, your father, me? I thought you'd been executed by your order, Ozma, because all of these things she did and more. Tiger, dear friend, replied Ozma, it was all a ruse for the benefit of my people and for Mombi herself. No one remembers what Mombi did, least of all Mombi herself. I removed her powers along with her memory. She's no threat any longer to anyone in Oz. I've seen to all of this myself. Ozma got down on bended knees by the tiger, who curled his huge frame beside her, nuzzling his huge head in her small lap. Why, Ozma, was his simple reply. All the things you have said about Mombi are absolutely true, but you must remember, I gave my word to her long ago that no harm would ever befall her. My word is my bond. You must let your hunger for vengeance go as well, or it'll eat you alive far quicker than the cruel curse she found you in. Ozma lifted the cat's large head in her hands and looked into his tear-stained eyes. Tiger, do you love me? She asked simply. Yes, your majesty, you know I do. Then obey my wishes. With those words, the hungry tiger laid his head once more in his sovereign's lap and closed his eyes. For the moment, content. Ozma turned her face towards Mombi, who still quaked with fear on the emerald-encrusted street. Leave here, old woman, and return to your home in the delicate forest. I have seen to the problem you brought before my representatives today. Depart in peace and do no harm. Mombi shuffled to her feet, her mouth opened in silent wonder. As she left, she looked back, seeing the Queen of Oz, wrapping her arms tightly around the massive neck of a great jungle cat. And for some unknown reason, to her complete and utter bafflement, the old crone felt her hot tears stinging in her feeble eyes. And that is the end of how the hungry tiger became hungry. And now I'd like to thank you for joining me in one more dedication to the magazine that has existed for so long. And I do hope that you enjoy the other stories and that you renew your subscription to the Wizard of Oz. Thank you. Now